Welcome back home. Feel the code. Safe and seen. You're not alone. Heal, connect, gently unfold the secure attachment code.
Welcome to the Secure Attachment Code podcast. My name is Tracy Malone, and in this episode, I wanted to touch on and talk about the inner critic. The inner critic is deemed a harsh, demanding internal voice that judges, demeans, and monitors your behaviour. When we were growing up, we were taught to ignore this voice. We were taught that our thoughts are not actually our own, and our thoughts are something that should be ignored, should be changed, and must always be positive. There's a lot changing in psychology today, which is a breath of fresh air, where we now know that your inner critic is a part of you that was formed through an adaptive strategy in childhood. Now, the adaptive strategy from childhood, all of our inner child parts were created at a very young age, and there isn't an inner critic that wasn't somehow criticised when they were younger. Criticism is not something that is innate to us. Criticism is not something we grow up and just become. It's not an emotion, it's an action, and it's a behaviour, and it needs to be taught. And so if you have an inner critic, the invitation is to get curious about when it is that you first learned what criticism was. And you usually learn it because somebody's with you and they're being critical about another person, or they're criticising you. The most well-meaning people can be quite critical. Your parents, when you're growing up as a tiny little human and you're trying to do something, they say, no, don't do that. No, don't do that. No, don't do that. That's dangerous. No, don't do that. That's wrong. You go to school and there is a right and a wrong way to do things. And if you have someone who first corrects you consistently, so criticism isn't always you are bad, you are wrong. Criticism can really come from a correction from someone where they say, no, that is not the way we do things here. No, that is not how it is done here. No, that is the wrong way to write that letter, that word. That is the wrong way to say that word. Every time somebody's correcting you, especially if you're a really sensitive child, which so many of us are, it can feel a lot like criticism. And so how does it help us to know that? Because when we're working on healing ourselves and healing the thoughts that we're having, our thoughts are an inner part of us asking for a need to be met. And so if we start doing things with the inner critic, like telling them they're wrong, telling them they shouldn't think that way, any correction that we try to give to our inner critic is going to keep them separate from us and will not encourage integration, safety, and healing in our parts and in our body. So here's how I help myself and my clients deal with the inner critic. I'll use a specific example. I used to do readings, psychic readings, and they are called horse wisdom readings, where I would channel the wisdom of the horses and nature through for people. And they were remote readings. So you would book and I would get the reading out to you within 5 working days. And when I first started doing these, I was really hesitant to actually do the readings. I kept thinking, why am I not doing the reading today? I know I've got 5 days to do it, so I've got plenty of time, but I actually have the space today to do it. I wonder why I'm not doing it. And what I realized when I stopped and allowed my stuckness to talk to me and said, what is it? Why aren't I actually going out and doing this reading right now while I have the time? And this part of me spoke clearly, and she said, because you don't know what you're doing. You're no good at this. Who do you think you are doing psychic readings? And when she started speaking, I knew how old she was. I knew who she was really loyal to, and I kind of knew how to work with her then. The hardest part sometimes is realizing that you just need to stop and open a dialogue. You keep trying to push through and do the thing, and you keep ignoring the part, that critical thought in this case coming through. So what I had was a younger part of me who was really loyal to my dad. And I knew she was loyal to my dad because the words she spoke sounded just like him. They are the kind of words that my dad would say to me if I said, I'm just going to go and record a psychic reading right now. Because this part of me is an inner critic, I don't tell her she's right or wrong. Because if she's wrong, it means I'm correcting her, which means that's more criticism for her, which means she's not going to be wanting to integrate and she's not going to feel safe in my company. Which means she's going to get more critical and louder and nastier and all of the things. So how I dealt with her specifically was I said, yeah, I'm going to go and do this psychic reading now, and maybe I'm no good at it. Maybe it won't work. I have no proof and nothing that I can say to you to say that this is, I absolutely 100% know for sure that this is going to work. I don't know. But the first thing I need to do is I just need to pull this chair out here and maybe I'll sit under this tree. Do you think this tree would be a good spot to sit under? And when I opened that dialogue with her, she said, no, I think that tree. And so already I had her engaged. And having her engaged is perfect because she didn't try to criticize me. She actually wanted to engage. So it shows me, anyone who's worked with children or has children knows that once they engage, you have got an open dialogue. And so I looked at where that was and I went and put the chair there and I sat there and I said, this feels good. Thanks. Thanks for your thoughts. And then she was back in again. You don't know what you're doing. You don't know what you're talking about. You've got no idea. Who do you think you are believing that you're psychic? And then she went on to do a bit of swearing. So then what I said to her was, I don't know if it is going to work. I don't know if it is any good. I don't know if I am any good at this. And there's only one way to find out. Would you like to join me while I do this? And she said, no, I'm going to sit over here and watch. I said, okay, that's amazing. And so what I did was each time I set something up, see how I didn't tell her she was wrong? I didn't tell her she was not included. Belonging is the greatest core need that we have. Belonging and safety are on the same level. And so at no time do I ever tell her she doesn't belong, that her thoughts are not valid. She can think whatever she wants and she can voice those and she will still be loved by me and she will still have a place of belonging with me. And then I did the reading and she sat and she just allowed me to do the reading. Whilst I was doing the reading itself, I didn't have any negative thoughts coming through. There were no interruptions. I was able to get into the flow of the reading. After the reading finished, she said, well, that was stupid, wasn't it? And I thought, yeah, maybe it was. I don't know. You know, it's not up to me to think about. and grade myself on how good I think the reading is. That's really up to the person who has booked the reading. So I tell you what, we'll send it off and we'll see what happens. I don't know if it works or not. Maybe it won't land. And the worst thing that can happen is somebody asks for a refund and I will give them their money back happily. And so a couple of days later, I got feedback from the client. When the message came through with feedback, I made sure the part of me that was being critical forward, and I read the email and it said things like, I can't believe you knew things about me without me even being there in the room. You got so many things right. It's exactly what I needed to hear. Thank you so much. This was so amazing. And she kind of gave me this shocked and surprised look and she said, well, I never. And I said, I know, right? How amazing is this? I didn't know if it would work either. And now I guess we've both learned something today, haven't we? And what has happened when I don't do those readings anymore, but when I was doing readings after that, instead of the inner critic, instead of having a block where there was a part of me that was being really critical and stopping me from doing it, that same part of me turned into a part that got really excited. When somebody would book a reading, that part of me would be like, oh my God, let's go and see what happens this time. This is getting really fun. And you can see the difference there. You can shift your inner critic into your greatest supporter and ally. And you do it by no judgment, no criticism, no correction. The other thing I do with an inner critic, and this one is really helpful for when you've done something and it seems to be wrong. If I do something and I made a perceived mistake, I don't believe there's such a thing as a mistake. There's just moments of learning to do things differently. And if a part of me, if a thought comes through that says, well, that was stupid, wasn't it? I say, sometimes we do things and we do them because we need to learn how not to do them. And sometimes I need to learn how to do things properly by learning in this way. I learn really well by actually doing. I'm okay with doing things differently sometimes and it not turning out how I'd hoped in the start because I always learn something from it. And so you're treating this part of you that is critical like you would your best friend, or hopefully like you would your child, really gently and kindly. Now, if I'm doing something like driving and I have a part of me that's critical / fearful, my thoughts become quite, oh, well, look out. What if somebody comes out of that street? No, careful, you might run into somebody here. When I have that kind of critical thoughts coming through my mind, what I do with that part of me is I simply say, oh, it's a lot to think about all the things that could go wrong. Did you know that life's allowed to be easy and things are actually allowed to go your way? And every time I do that, I feel this space open up in my body and in my chest, and I feel myself coming into my body. And all of those thoughts that were coming in to perceive the danger and the things, the bad things that could happen, they simply dissipate because I've given that inner part of me that was feeling really critical and really anxious, I've given her a place of safety to lean into, and I've also given her something else to think about. You know, if you've got children and you see children who are just really stuck in one thing and they're talking back and they're just being really narky, What I often do in those moments is I connect, redirect. And it's such a beautiful thing to do with children, and you can do the same thing with your inner child and inner parts. Connect first. Wow. It seems like you've got a lot going on today. That's a lot of big feelings you're having there. I wonder what it would be like if life was easy. If I have a child who's narky, what I do is I walk up and I place my hands on their shoulder and I would say, I love you so much. Would you like a hug? And then a big hug, and then redirect somehow. Hey, I've been thinking about doing this. Would you like to come and do this with me? Hey, I was just about to make a snack. Are you hungry? Redirect them into another space. So try that connect, redirect on yourself, on your inner parts, on your thoughts, and let me know how you go. If that seems a bit hard for you to do yourself and it doesn't quite make sense, that's totally okay. That's what I'm here for. You can get more information about what it is that I offer on my website, tracymalone.co. You can follow me on my socials at xotracymalone. I am on Facebook and Instagram and TikTok and a few other places too. So you'll find me on your socials. Thank you so much for joining me today on the Secure Attachment Code podcast. I look forward to seeing you in the next episode.